talking about Nigerian economic update from January to date, what has really happened to the Nigerian economy? What gains, what achievement have we really achieved on Nigerian economy in the year 2025? With a lot of structural reform here and there by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. How has those structural reform translated to a better economy for Nigerian citizens? Joining me right now is Murktar Mohammed. A very good day to have you on the show, Mr. Murktar.
My pleasure to be on your program.
All right. So
I'm looking forward to be live with you sometime next week. I'll be in Abuja. I hope to be live in your studio.
It will be very great to host you live in the studio. And I wish you safe trip to Abuja, coming to Abuja from Lagos. So let's get down to our discussion. First and foremost, there is no way we will discuss Nigerian economic update for 2025 without looking into the global economic scenario. A lot has happened on a global scale. Can you give us a brief on global economic update? I can recall, I think in the month of August or October, you are in US, and we did a global analysis of the economy globally. But let's have an update from you in that regard.
Well, the global economy started in a very turbulent way. Remember the tariff war between America and China, then Europe, then came the Russia-Ukraine crisis is still there. There were a lot of challenges, especially in terms of easing inflation at the beginning of the year. But towards the middle of the year, I wouldn't say towards the middle of the year, we started seeing ease. And towards the last quarter of the year, then we'll be seeing the cut of rate globally, whether United States, European Union, the United Kingdom, Nigeria, Ghana, and other African countries. We started seeing ease in terms of ease from high to ease. And we saw this trade war came down. We saw the settlement between Russia and China. We saw global oil price stabilize, even if to the disadvantage of a country like Nigeria, to $65 per barrel, between 65, 64. So with the global economy, you can't but not forget to mention that the United States currency went the lowest time in the history of the U.S. currency, and they underperform with other global currency, and we really enjoyed that also, because that also bring down the pressure that we have on our exchange rate. So I think in a nutshell, we've seen the global economy recover, especially from the inflationary pressure. We've seen global supply chain stabilize. And I think in 2026, we will see an economy that will be on autopilot.
Interesting. But talking about global economy recovery, and we also understand that at this period in time, when we examine that global economy, you and I, when you were in US, we talk more on the global market, particularly the stock market across the world. And we did arrive at a very interesting aspect whereby the tech sector, the tech group on the global US stock market were doing fantastically well. What do you say of now, between that time and now? Has anything changed? The global stock market, particularly the US stock market, and the performance of tech companies, are they still performing the way it was in the middle of the year 2025 and now that we are right now?
No, Lekon. We've seen that is, especially we are beginning to hear of bubble, AI bubble might happen. So we are seeing that is in the global tech space. But again, we've seen expansion in that space also, in terms of most of those major players in that space thinking of moving to to India to develop an economy. We are also seeing that African countries too are benefiting from that. Also, some African countries will begin to enjoy partnership with Google, with Microsoft, and others. So I think what we saw then was the hype, or will I say not the hype really, because AI has come to stay. But we saw a new technology that everybody was excited about, and then we saw, for the first time, we saw trillion-dollar companies. We saw Nevada move up to one of the most valued companies in America, into $1 trillion. We also saw Google also move. We also saw Amazon also all move to all-time highs. But again, they come down, but they didn't come down to where they started during the year. And so you can see where they perform incredibly well, but the noise of the bubble in AI is not really what we think it is. I think it's having an effect on some of these tech companies. And don't forget that the trade war also have an impact on them. So even if the tech companies were not they were not involved in the global trade war, what I mean by terms of tariff, but they also have other subsidiaries that suffer from this tariff hike or trade war. So that has impacted the market. But by and large, I think they still perform very well in 2025.
Interesting. But before we go into domestic issue of the Nigerian economy, let's still take a look at some sub-regional economic development. Just last week, we had the GU20 meeting in South Africa. Also, we also have the EU-African Economic Summit in Angola. But what do you make of, first and foremost, what do you make of the G20 meeting? Even though President Bola Ahmed Tinubu did not go, but he sent some representative, the Vice President Kashim Shettima was there. But what do you make of the G20 and the inroad of economic development across the world, particularly for Africa?
Well, G20 for me is always a jamboree. And this time around, we did not have the powerhouse, the #1 economy in the world, the United States of America. Donald Trump didn't go, and neither did he send a representative there. So definitely, it didn't have the kind of impact that it should have. And issues were brought in there. And for me, like I said, the G20 have not really had a positive impact on African economy outside of China, that is a major player in Africa economy, and the United States. If you look at other G20 nations like Brazil, how much of business do they really do with Africa? Mostly the European bloc, in terms of their type of business, in terms of value, and even addition to African GDP is very low. I think the two big economies, the United States and China, are the biggest player in African economy. So when you see those G20 decisions being made, then these countries individually begin to drive out their policy in terms of trade with other African countries. For the UK, is it the European Economic Summit? That's a good one.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a good one. We are seeing that for the first time. Because again, they are beginning to look at Africa as that new bride that is in town, especially because of our raw materials, because of our population, and also they know that we have so much to offer. But unfortunately, we're not excited about that. They are looking at our raw materials. They are not looking at making our country a hub for finished products. And you can't fault them for that, because again, when you look at our economy, Africa economy globally, or Africa economy as a whole, outside of South Africa, maybe Morocco, maybe Egypt, that have infrastructure. So which other African country can you say really have good infrastructure to host any of these global economic big time players? So that is the major challenge, because we started the program with a tech company. I think the economy has gone to the service sector. The service sector seems to be the key driver of the economy, and that is the AI, artificial intelligence, and other tech makeup. And if you look at that, they involve a lot of infrastructure. And as it stands now, Africa really don't have such infrastructure to be able to benefit from this big time, this AI and all these tech companies. So hopefully, the partnership will create those, will help us create those infrastructural gap. And if they are able to do that, then we can begin to say we are really going to be, it's going to be a really exciting time for Africa with the EU and the G20. I'm happy that the G20 was hosted by Africa. And unfortunately, President Tinubu couldn't go because of the security challenge that we're facing at that time. But he sent an able representative in the Vice President, which I think is a very strong signal that we have sent to the G20 that we believe in whatever they are doing. And the good thing is that by 2030, 2035. We are believing, we are working that Nigeria will be among the 20 largest economy in the world.
Exactly. Interesting. Talking about the largest economy in the world, at the beginning of this year, 2025, projection of how Nigeria economy will grow was released, 3.8%. That was the projection. IMF on one side projected about 3.9%. The World Bank came up with about 3.7%. But Nigerian government on their part was a bit ambitious. They were going for as high as 4% and more. But what do you make of all this projection? Now we are in December. Projection have come and it's almost come and go. But I won't say it has come and go. But we are now in December. What do you make of all those projections for Nigerian economy in 2025?
Projections are good for your economy, especially when they are positive. But projection alone cannot drive your economy to where you are projecting it to be. There must also be the aspect of work. And I think whether we like it or not, President Tinubu administration have tried to do the work in spite of the challenges that they met on ground. But they tried to do the work in terms of structural reforms. But it has not been an easy task. And despite this positivity, inflation, you know what I meant about inflation. When I say inflation, I'm talking about rebasing inflation.
Exactly.
So you've seen inflation come down, rebasing inflation come down. I like putting that part big on rebasing inflation come down. Because if you want to follow the real inflation where we were before, we should have been doing like 27% now compared to the rebasing that has brought us to this level. So let's leave that. Rebasing inflation came down. We saw foreign investors patronizing our Eurobond. We saw foreign reserve grew by almost 20 billion. We've seen exchange rate stabilize. We see mild price reduction. No matter how mild it is, we have to celebrate it. We've seen an economy that has had one of the best performing capital markets in the world before the latest advent of the capital gain tax or no capital gain tax have brought the market to where it is today. So when you look at all these things that have happened in 2025, you can say Nigeria has done well. But again, you have to look at, has it really done well to the real economy? That is the man on the street. I think the man on the street life is still like it used to be, if not worse, towards the end of the year. So GDP growth has not brought job, have not brought food on the table of Nigeria, have not brought job for them. Easing of inflation have not really reduced expenditure. So all these are what we expect the president to do going forward. But like I always say, when there is a reform, the sectors that benefit where the investors first. Then after from the investors, you begin to see the companies. Then from the companies, it will begin to trickle down to the real people that are supposed to benefit. So I think they have suffered enough. The real Nigerians, those the downtrodden Nigerians. Hopefully, 2026 will be their year of reward.
Exactly. Talking about the day of reward for Nigerians, it's quite interesting. We also look at the macroeconomic stability of Nigeria. You know, one critical question that analysts like yourself and others will be very, very cautious to answer is when we ask you guys that has Nigeria really achieved a macroeconomic stability? I don't know what will be your response now, but help us to provide a solution to that question. Have we really achieved a macroeconomic stability in 2025? Even though 2025 is less than, 29 days or more to go, but help me out on this question first.
Lincoln, when you look at where you were, where you were at the beginning of the year,
exactly,
where we were at the middle of the year, and where we are today, you can say we have been able to achieve a little bit of macroeconomic stability. At the beginning of the year, exchange rate was going as high, almost hitting 1,800. People were projecting it to stand at 2,500. But today, it is 1,450, not even 1,500, which is the benchmark of the government. So, have there been challenges? Yes, there have been challenges. The challenge that we have seen in the macroeconomy, low oil price, low oil output, despite the projection of high oil price and high outlook. But you also can say that local local refinery has helped in keeping price moderation in PMS, in the gas, and other key drivers of inflation in Nigeria. What would have lost in terms of low oil price, we have gained in terms of Eurobond oversubscription, which has brought in effects into the Nigerian economy, and that has helped stabilize the Nigerian economy. Remember that if they don't trust your economy, no matter the even if our rates that we are giving to bring those from into the microeconomy is very, very, very high, but again, it has also been able to stabilize the economy, and we have seen an oversubscription of that space. So for me, yes, it could be a touch and go in terms of stability. For me, now it's touch and go in terms of structural stability that you talked about, but we cannot say we did not try to achieve micro stability, and we didn't attempt to at least a little of it.
Exactly. And talking about achieving micro stability, we can't rule out the business environment, the organized private sector when it comes to Nigerian micro stability. But for you, what do you make of how far we have done in terms of elevating support for organized private sector in Nigeria? Have we really given them what they really want? Are we really giving them what they have been calling the government to give to them when it comes to supporting businesses in Nigeria?
Legon, I don't think so. The environment has not been able to give them that. You can't blame the government. Also, the government made a very volatile, unstructural economic environment, so they are not able to give the private sector what they really want. But again, the government also did not tend to use the private sector very well, because the private sector is still the key driver of the Nigerian economy. We didn't see so much of the PPP, public-private partnership between government and the private sector. And for me, that was where the government didn't get it right with the private sector. If they have engaged the private sector in that aspect, then I would have been saying that the private sector have really benefited from the government. And the government have been able to give them what they want. Yes, the government have not been able to give them what they want. If you look at the private sector, if you look at contraction, you look at consumption, you look at most of these economy companies in the private sector, they really suffered this year. Though you can't compare to what they suffered last year or at the beginning of the year in terms of FX fluctuation or floating of the naira. But you've seen them gradually recover from all those policies. But it has not been a very good year for most of all this Nigerian private sector, especially in the area of FX. But it is better than where it was at the beginning of the year.
Interesting. But when you talk about the private sector achieving their own goals, their aims by themselves, just last week, a report came out from Nigerian Bureau of Statistics that the income tax of private sector in Nigeria grew by 38% in the half year of 2025. And what does that really tell us when it comes to the income that the taxes that private sector are paying, even though government is not giving them that kind of elaborate support that they desire?
Like I want to ask is which sector really drive that income? So we need to ask. I think that income was largely driven by the financial sector. You know, that seems to be the bracket of the Nigerian economy at now, whether in terms of recapitalization, in terms of foreign importation, of FX into the economy. I think it was that sector that really drive those statistics that you are seeing. So yes, the company income tax was fantastic at that rate, but if you go to look at it critically, you realize that the financial sector that was the largest driver of that volume of amount that you have seen. So the real sector that is supposed to have more employability of Nigeria, create more jobs for Nigerians, reduce hunger, did not really benefit from that. And so you can see the disconnect. That is why such a high income can go to government, but the life of the people are still way below what they should be doing. So yes, I celebrate income tax. It has gone to the government. But again, let us now look at it again. Was the government able to use this income tax to create value for the companies and then in turn create value for ordinary Nigeria? Definitely no. Because if you look at both the state and the federal government and the local government, since President Tinubu came to power, the kind of revenue they've gotten for the federation account is not commensurate to what they have been giving, they've been able to give to the people. They have earned more, but the people have not seen that more impacting their life. For me, that is what makes it the gap between those, when you see those numbers and the reality on ground, it doesn't add up.
Interesting. But also on that side of the private sector thriving, let me quickly ask you this question before it skips my mind. The Manufacturing Association of Nigeria are promising that next year, 2026, they will grow the economy by 33.6%. But what do you make of this promise? And looking at what they have done so far in 2025?
Well, they are driving their promise to focus on stable exchange rate. And they are doing that promise towards a lot of microeconomic indices, like they feel that the rate will remain very low. They feel that the Central Bank of Nigeria will continue to cut rates. All this is what is going to drive that number that you are seeing. So it's still not what it should be, or it's not like it is permanently what will be. It's based on the projection. And don't forget, we are having they are going to enjoy a lot in terms of the new tax law that is coming into effect. They are going to enjoy a lot. So they are using that also to project more for themselves going forward. But I think basically what is going to really drive them is the stable exchange rate. And if the manufacturing sector is able to strive, like they say, it's such a good news for Nigeria economy. Because what we will definitely see is an improvement on our economy. What we will definitely see, there will be job for Nigerian youth if this ever happens. For me, I'll be excited for them to achieve that. But the only place government will need to support them is in the area of creating a conducive environment through micro and physical policy to drive this projection that the manufacturing sector are saying will happen in 2026.
All right, interesting. But let's quickly take a look at tax. You made mention of the tax stuff that the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu push in the year 2025. Just last week also, he has approved the appointment of the tax implementation committee. What do you make of this committee? And what do you say about the likes of Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, who work assiduously to ensure that we have this kind of reform in the tax sector of Nigeria? But first and foremost, the tax committee that has been put in place to implement the tax law in 2026, what do you make of them?
I make nothing of them. I see it as duplication of, it's like duplication of characters, or what would I call it? Because it's only in Nigeria you see such a thing. You have a presidential tax reform committee that is supposed to drive the tax reform, and now you are having a president in whatever they call it, implementation. I don't understand. We are so excited in coming up with committees. I think what we should be doing now is to begin to engage the stakeholders to see what are the loopholes that must be corrected, not bringing up a separate committee to begin to look at those loopholes. I think for me, sometimes it's a way of politically creating relevancy for people that you think were part of your team, one way or the other, that did not get relevant. So you are trying to create a system around them that will make them relevant before the end of your tenure. I don't think there was any need for an implementation committee. And in that committee, we don't have Taiwo Oyedele there. Maybe within the time, we might have him, Oyedele, in that committee. We might have him later. But when you look at that committee, I don't know what that committee is coming to do. Is they say you engage stakeholders. You see, if you really want to grow your tax net, you must be able to engage before you begin even put in the law, then go to implementation. But it's only in Nigeria you put in the law, then you come back to engage the stakeholders on implementation. And then when there's a loophole, you begin to delay. So it is now looking like if January is no more visible for us to see that new tax reform, because there's still a lot of engagement. And that engagement can continue till 2026 come to an end. Don't forget that 2026 is an election year. 2027 is going to be the election. So you might begin to see a political solution. Remember the value-added tax issue?
Exactly.
You remember how that dragged into they came up with a political solution? So it's not a year that the president will want to look and call the bluff of anybody and say, look, I've gone ahead with this reform, there's nothing you can do. The man is thinking of the next election. He's thinking of how to win the next election. And anything that will put that winning in jeopardy is not ready to do it. And I think because of the lack of clarity in some area of this tax reform bill, I am sorry, I don't see this bill seeing the light of day before the end of in January, like we thought it would be.
Exactly. But let's go to the market and see Nigerian stock market for 2025. From your own review and engagement on the market, how will you describe the market, the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter? We are now in the fourth quarter right now. And the market, the best part of November, we saw so much of red, bearish on the market. But you are an insider. Take us through on the market from January till now and what has really happened.
Oh, it has been the good, the bad, the ugly. The market started the year in the good. You saw those numbers, you saw those equity rise, you saw those valuation from those companies, you saw those companies' income, especially the sector, the consumer goods sector. You saw the recovery, telecom, ICT, telecom sector, the lack of Nestle, Dangote Sugar, Dangote Cement. You saw those huge recovery. You saw the banking sector hitting an all-time low, all-time high in terms of banks like GTCO, Zenith Bank, Fidelity Bank, even Access Bank, even UBA. You saw those positivity. You saw those news. The bad was when we had this forbearance come in. We saw activities come down. We saw the market respond to it. Then we saw the banks recover. Then came the ugly. The ugly was in November, where about 6 point something trillion was wiped off the market. From a height of 50%, the market is struggling to even enter 40% at the moment. And that was largely driven because there was no clear-cut policy direction, and all transits from the government did not help the market. The market saw the largest loss in history. I'm saying in history, in a month, which was about 6 point something trillion, wiped off from the market in the month of November. That was the ugly that we saw in the market. But again, when you look at the larger picture, you look at since President Tinubu came to Nigeria, to government, realize that if there's any place that has benefited from the economic policy of President Bola Tinubu, it has been the Nigerian stock market. And now you can add to it that if there's any sector that has suffered the loss since President Tinubu came to the presidency, you can still say it's the Nigerian stock market.
But let me quickly take you on this. We also saw a new law coming to the market. The Security and Investment Law has come to the market. But for SEC is saying that the implementation will start on January 1st, 2026. But what do you make of this shift in implementation? Because many people are expecting that let the law kickstart now, but SEC is saying, hold on, guys, till January 1st, that's when we are taking up on the law.
We prepare to hold on again. Maybe January 1st, hold on. We have to wait for it to the middle of the year. Then it will see the last of the day. I think I like that. The Security and Exchange Commission, you can give it to them. They've done well. Them and the NGS and the CSCS, they have done fantastically well in 2025. You look at today, we are doing T2 plus T2 that's coming, and hopefully next year we'll be doing T1, and also we see the extension of market hours. So definitely you can say that they really have done a lot for the market. The tribunal coming in to give more investment confidence. It will be easy to dispense judgment immediately. Investors will get whatever they have to get, and companies also, individuals and others. So for me, it's a good thing. But hopefully we will see it come to see the light of the day. But one area that I think the Security and Exchange Commission, the NC, the Nigerian Exchange Group, should engage themselves, for me, is in that area of claiming of outstanding dividends. Investors should be able to assess their dividend when it is time, especially outstanding dividend. there's no clear-cut policy direction on how will I be able to collect my dividend that has been warehoused with Security and Exchange Commission. What is the interest? What is the percentage interest? Am I sharing my money with the government? Will they still tax me from those interests that they decided to invest it on my behalf? And I want my money. How soon can I get it? Those are what the Security and Exchange Commission needs to come up with, so that the market will have confidence in them in terms of transparency and integrity. If they don't come up with that, for me, all the good works
will be left. And instructively, Murktar, what you just said right now, some few hours ago before I come on air, a colleague of mine was asking me to educate him on the stock market. And I did educate him. And we got to a point where he asked me, what about if I'm not available and I want to get my money? How will I get his money? Or how will he get his money? I was at that point, I have to explain to him the challenge between what you have just explained right now, when people are not able to get their dividend at the right time. But going forward into the discussion, because we need to look at solutions, because we have learned some lessons in 2025. We are not projecting anything for 2026 yet. Time for projection will come by January. But right now, what do you think we need to do more for the economy in 2025 before 31st of January 2025?
We should be clear on what direction we want the economy to go in 2025. We should be mindful of our utterances, especially as regards the Nigerian economy, as regards the Nigerian stock market. We should be able to educate our populace of the advantage of what they have and how they can take advantage of it. And then we should also be able to empower them to be able to take advantage of it. So for me, clear-cut policy direction is needed going into 2026. What is the capital gain tax? What is the tax bracket? What is the personal income tax? What is the dividend policy? How do I claim my unclaimed dividends? Give me a clear-cut direction on how I can go about that, rather than I'm making it look like rocket science. So I think those are part of the thing. Micro policy, physical policy. What is the physical sites are expected to do? Where are those infrastructure that you promised us? The money that we borrowed, what are we using it for? Which infrastructure is it tied to? Later, today is the 1st of December. The budget of 2026 have not been presented to the National Assembly. And we are running possibly 3 budgets at the same time in one single financial year. How do we get into such mess? How do we come out from those mess? That is what I expect the government to be thinking of going into 2026.
Exactly. And for the private sector, which you also belong, what should they be doing at this point in time? Because CBN released the PMI, the Purchasing Manager Index, and they said we have crossed over 50% for in the month of November per se. But what do you make of it all going forward, and your advice to the private organized sector in the 2025 Nigerian economy, way forward to get things done properly?
Keep your faith high. That's what I would tell them. Keep your faith high. Keep believing in the economy. Keep being innovative. Be creative. That's the only way forward. Tenacity, perseverance, because that is what in the Nigerian economy we need most of the private sector to be in 2026. The worst is over in 2025. I can say that the worst is over, especially in exchange rates, especially in inflation. So it's now time for the private sector to innovate so that the ordinary Nigeria will begin to enjoy from that innovation. And don't forget, Nigeria is a consumer-driven economy. And so once you begin to get a lot of people consume, then the economy will expand. And that will be to the benefit of the private sector. And not only that, the private sector also should be thinking of expanding into other sides of the Nigerian economy, especially after the rebasing, that have come up with critical sectors that need investment. They should also be looking at that to take advantage of those critical sectors that need investment. I think for me, that's what I think the private sector should be doing going into 2026.
That is a quite very, I mean, a package of advice that I know that if those private sector will seek you, they will pay some millions of dollars to get such advice. But on the platform here, they are getting it for free. Murktar Mohammed, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Nathan. Hopefully see you next week.
I can't wait to have you live in my studio here, ADBN Television, here in Asokoro. I can't wait to have you. But wish you a safe trip to Abuja when you are coming.
Thank you.
All right, enjoy the rest of your day over there in Lagos.
You too.
All right. So I've been speaking with Murktar Mohammed, CEO of Finance with Murktar Mohammed, talking about updates on Nigerian economy since January to date. And you hear from him. The economy has received a boost when it comes to growth. The economy has received stimulus when it comes to empowering the economy in one way or the other. But on the other side, the economy on the side has also received the bad side, meaning that government policy, some way, somehow, some of them have not really delivered on the project goals and targets. But as Murktar said, the government must review all this before the end of the year and get the economy working for all Nigerians. We have come to the end of today's edition of the Market Report. As I said earlier in the introduction of the show, all we'll be doing in the month of December is to have an update of all Nigerian economy. We have done a general review today. We'll be going to sectorial review from tomorrow, God's willing. So we'll come your way with another exciting edition of the Market Report. Please do stay out of trouble and be a good Nigerian citizen. See you. Bye.